This question came up on a Dachshund group, and I thought it was such a great question. Thought I'd explain and do a little video how I have managed to socialise my dogs with cats. So I got my first cat, I think it was about 2005, and I found him almost dead on the streets, and no owner ever came forward. And when I took him to the vets, she literally said, I don't think he's going to last the night, do you want me to put him down now? And I was like, well, I found him, and I think I'm going to take him home, and I'm just going to care for him and see what happens. And my dogs, who I had at the time, absolutely hated cats. I'm not kidding. And I didn't know anything about sort of training the same way I do now, but I just thought the things that I did was kind of just sort of a bit of trial and error, and getting them used to him. So he ended up living 12 fabulous years, and so I literally, what I did was actually had him in a room and got them used to the scent of him. And I didn't know everything I know now, but that's actually a really good way to do it. And there's different things I do now, which I'll explain. But it was a really, really slow process, just with gradual sort of introductions in safety and lots of reinforcing for calmness and treats when my cat was around. So he was like behind a dog gate, and in some cases behind a shut door to start with, and just reinforcing them with treats and giving them things like Kongs. I don't think we didn't have things like Snuffle mats and lick mats then, but just, you know, scatter feeding and things like that. So fast forward to Inca. So she's a blind dog from Romania. She is genetically a dog with a very, very high prey drive. And so my elderly cat, the one that I found in the street, she was absolutely always fine with, I think because he was just like really chill. And but the first time she ever went upstairs, where my other cat Holly was, she'd learnt to climb the stairs. It was a big deal. I suddenly heard this screaming, and I raced upstairs, and Holly had Inca. So Holly Cat had Inca the dog pinned in a corner and was hissing at her, and poor Inca was just absolutely terrified. And I didn't realise that Inca would climb the stairs. It was my stupid fault, because she'd not even gone near the stairs, and I'd had to help her down every stair when she came down and help her up them. And so the hatred has been very intense ever since then. So a couple of things I've done. So first of all, I have had a fleece blanket that I would have on Inca's bed during the evening, and then during the day it would go up to my bed, where Holly would sort of snooze in front of the sunlight streaming into the room, and so their scent was mingling over it. So then Inca would have it back in her on her bed during the day, and so she'd be getting this scent of Holly. The other thing I would do is get some hair from Holly and popped it in a jam jar, and so every time I fed Inca, I would give her a sniff of this hair before I fed her. Now I know that sounds a bit sort of counterproductive, but actually it really works effectively, and it's one of the ways we train things like passive and active scent. Can you see? Yeah, do you want to cut Inca's? She's cute, she's snoozing in the grass. Can you see her? She's just having a good snooze. So it's one of the ways we will we would train dogs when they're searching certainly either passive or active scent. So it is good, and it's not going to make them want to kill the cat. It's giving them a positive reinforcement, so they're getting a scent of that thing and getting a sniff of the cat. And so those two things are really, really useful. So I know it was to do with the neighbour's cat. So what I would ask your neighbour is if you can get some hair from the cat, if when they groom the cat, you can get some hair and pop it in a jam jar, and maybe give them a fleecy blanket and say, could you get your cat to lie on it, so that you can associate your dogs with the scent of that cat. And then it is going to be hard to get them used to the cat, and then anytime the cat is in the garden, preempt that with lots of positive reinforcement, like loads of snuffle mats, lick mats, even if you've got to have absolutely loads, so that when the cat's out, your dog's got activities to do in the garden. It's starting to associate that cat with something really high value, and wanting to get, will get treats. Now it is one of those things that it's going to take a long time. It took me 6 months to associate my two dogs who hated cats to a cat in the house, and they weren't even dogs that had a high prey drive. They weren't a breedless, but little bits of activities small amounts, sort of 5 minutes a day, is going to make a massive difference. It is hard if they're sniffing at the door and the cat's outside and things like that, but the more you can do with the scent work in the house, it should decrease the arousal so that they're not pacing the floor, because I know that was one of the problems. I think they're pacing the floor at night trying to get to this cat because they're just so aroused by it. So the more you can decrease the arousal with like the scent on a fleecy blanket and in a jam jar, you're going to decrease their arousal to it, because they're going to be so habituated to that smell, and you're also going to be tying that smell up with some really fabulous things like treats, and then something I would do in the garden, for example, and the first time if the cat's out there, I would get some treat mats and snuffle mats out in the garden. Now the first time you let your dog out and the cat's around on the fence or whatever, you're probably going to overshoot the snuffle mats, but just keep going, keep having faith. And I'll just give you another quick example. Is one of my dogs spins. When we get up in the morning, she comes downstairs and she spins and she spins and she spins, and it was really it was actually stressing Inca out a lot, but also she was crushing into things, so it was actually potentially dangerous. So what I started doing was putting snuffle mats down on the floor, so that when I let her downstairs in the morning, so I go down first, I prep everything, she'd sniff the snuffle mats. Now the first time we did it, she just completely overshot them, because it was just, and then she was like looking back, because obviously I was showing her what was going on, and then as we've continued this practice every morning, she now comes down, and I've reduced the amount of snuffle mats. I only have 2 snuffle mats on the ground now, but she's sedate and she's settled, and she comes down and she goes to the first snuffle mat and she has a few treats, and then she goes to the second snuffle mat, and it works. But again, it takes time, so literally small amounts of be consistent, do something every day. 5 minutes a day is better than an hour's training once a week, so just be consistent. Have a little plan of what you're going to do, break up what you're going to do, but use the scent. That's the thing that's so key. So I hope that's helpful. If you've got any questions, let me know.